old brain. And Dr. Hammer found that the exact opposite principle is the case with all organs and tissues that are controlled from the cerebrum. So the point is, or the principle is, if less tissue is required to facilitate a conflict resolution, the conflict-related organ will respond to the shock, to the conflict with tissue loss. So the opposite of cell proliferation. So let's look at an example. And this is always good it's very, obvious how we can explain this. Let's look at the cervix. The cervix is the passageway to the uterus. And Dr. Hammer found that the cervix, or the conflict linked to the cervix, is a sexual conflict of not being able to mate. While in nature a female can suffer such a conflict if mating is interrupted or doesn't take place for one or the other reason. Well, if this is the case, the cervix, the passageway to the uterus, immediately starts to ulcerate, causing tissue loss. And the biological purpose of the tissue loss is to widen the cervix, so when mating finally takes place, more sperm can reach the uterus, which enhances the chance of conception. Dr. Hammer found that we women, or women in general, can suffer these conflicts as well. So for us, this translates, for example, into sexual rejection, sexual frustration, sexual abuse, or anything shocking in regards to sexuality. So we see that tissue loss serves the purpose to facilitate the conflict resolution. With other biologically meaningful tissue loss programs are linked to our skin, for example, to the stomach lining, to the lining of our bronchial tubes, to the bile duct lining, the lining of the pancreatic ducts, thyroid ducts, and milk ducts, just to name a few. This is what we call the biological compass of German new medicine. And let's look at that. Look what we have already learned. We learned that all brain control tissue generate during the conflict active phase cell augmentation, cell proliferation, let's say as in form of a tumor. While all cerebrum controlled tissue or new brain controlled tissue generate during the conflict active phase a meaningful, so biologically purposeful tissue loss or cell loss. This takes us now to the second biological law. The second biological law states that every biologically special program, you see we don't use the term disease any longer, we call this a biological program. So the second biological program states that every disease or every special program runs in two phases, provided there is a resolution to the conflict. And as we already learned, this program runs parallel on all three levels, and the level of the psyche, the brain, and the organ. So let's see how this all plays out as far as our nervous system is concerned. So let's look what we see here. Before we have a DHS, before we have a conflict shock, our nervous system, or we are in a state of normotonia. Normotonia means that we are in a normal day and night rhythm where sympathikotonia alternates with vagotonia. These are terms that relate to our autonomic nervous system, and all it says is that during the day we are sympathicotonic, our heart rate is up, our muscles are going, we are in a normal state of stress. After 5 o'clock in the afternoon, we go into natural or normal vagotonia, which is the time where our mind, our body needs to rest. We're in a natural state of rest. And Dr. Hammer found the moment we suffer a DHS or a conflict shock, this normal day and night rhythm is instantly interrupted and we enter what we call the conflict active phase, which is a prolonged sympathicotonic state, a prolonged state of stress. And when we resolve the conflict, CL stands for conflictulysis or conflict resolution, we enter the healing phase or a prolonged state of vagotonia, a prolonged state of rest. So let's look into more detail. Well, we have all been there many, many times. Typically, when we are conflict active, we are totally preoccupied with the conflict. We can't think of anything else. We can't focus on anything else. All we do is to dwell and think about what took place. So we are totally preoccupied with the conflict. We can't sleep and we can't eat. But we have to realize that the extra waking hours of waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning and start thinking about the conflict, and that this focus on the conflict and the extra waking hours serve the biological purpose or have the significance to give us enough time or extra time to think about the conflict and find a resolution as quickly as possible. We call the conflict active phase also the cold phase, because when we're in the state of stress, our blood vessels are constricted, and as a result, we have cold hands, we have cold extremities. So typically all cold symptoms like the shivers or cold sweats only occur during the healing phase. Well, the moment we resolve the conflict, we enter the healing phase. Okay? So typically, when we are healing, we are very tired. Fatigue is always an indication that a natural healing process is taking its course. The healing phase is a vagotonic, a prolonged vagotonic state. It is, in simple terms, like resting after a big battle. So we are very tired, and there is a biological purpose, and the reason why we are very tired, because we need to rest, we need to sleep as much as possible so we can support the organism, the body, while healing takes place. So let's see warm phase, very important. We call the healing phase also the warm phase because the blood vessels are widened. Okay? Now we have hot hands, we have fever potentially, so all the hot symptoms, including inflammation, typically occur during the healing phase. So let's look now what happens on the healing phase, in the healing phase on the organ level, and this is most fascinating. The moment the conflict is resolved, all tumors or a tumor that grows during the conflict active phase instantly stops growing. But not only that, the moment the conflict is resolved, the tumor not only stops growing, but the tumor is now decomposed and broken down with the help of specialized microbes that have been trained over the course of evolution to do exactly that. And this takes us to the fourth biological law and the beneficial role of microbes. When our body, our organism developed over time, microbes developed with our organism. And the biological purpose or the function of the organism is to maintain our tissue and keep our body in a healthy state. And Dr. Hammer made two other important discoveries. Dr. Hammer found that these microbes that populate our organism are only active during the healing phase. So during the conflict active phase, they are dormant, they are inactive. But the moment the related conflict is resolved, the microbes instantly start the work that was assigned to them. Because Dr. Hammer also found that the manner and the style in which these microbes work are in full accordance with evolutionary logic.